Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar on quick service catering. We're going to give everyone a few minutes to join in, and so we're going to be back in just a few minutes to kick everything off. It looks like everyone has joined, so let's get started. I know we're all super eager to chat about catering today. My name's Rachel. I'm client marketing lead here at Lunchbox, and today I'm super excited to be joined by my colleague Sydney, associate product manager, who has a particular lens on catering, and she's here to share today the challenges that she's been seeing within the industry and how technology has helped restaurants overcome these. So welcome, Sydney.
Awesome. Thank you. Hey, everybody. Excited to be here.
And for those of joining today that Lunchbox might be the first time they've heard about them, we want to share a little bit about who we are and what we're doing here in the restaurant industry. So Lunchbox is a modern ordering system for restaurants of all sizes to grow their online revenue with a mission to provide restaurants with the resources that they need to boost sales and protect their profits. Today, please feel free to post any questions that you have within the chat throughout the webinar. We'll try our best to get to you, but if we happen to miss any of your questions, just reach out with your responses and we'll get back to you after the webinar. So let's jump into it. What are we going to be talking about today? Catering is a huge topic. And we only really have 30 minutes today to chat, so we're going to dwindle down and focus on 4 key areas. We're first going to jump into some of the current social changes and trends that we see that are affecting the industry. Then we're going to talk about a really interesting trend called experimental catering. Then Sydney's going to share a lot of her expertise on the technology that is really helping restaurants boost their catering services. And then lastly, we're going to talk about catering sustainability. So let's jump into it. Social changes and trends. This is also a very big topic, but today we're going to focus on 3 key areas here. How inflation is affecting growth, the social changes, and the rise of group ordering. And then lastly, workplaces and how post-pandemic changes are helping a lot of catering businesses see growth today. So I'm sure everyone tuning in today knows that inflation is really affecting us all. We're seeing food prices soar, and many consumers are less willing to eat out, making a really big impact on the restaurant industry. And this has forced many of restaurants to slim down menus, change partners, or even services so that they can maximize their operations and food costs. But we want to be here today to also say this isn't all doom and gloom because we've noticed a lot of our partners with catering services are seeing some positive growth if they're willing to jump on these different changes that are happening and some trends. And so, Sydney, I know we've talked about this a little bit as well. Have you seen in your time here about like what restaurants are seeing today in these different trends?
For sure, I have. So I've spoken to a few restaurants lately, and they are making the same or even higher revenues with the equal or even less orders, cooks, processes, operational costs. So let's take this into an actual example. So let's pretend that a restaurant has a goal to make $10,000 in revenue a week. And let's say their average order ticket value is typically around 20-ish dollars. That means in order to obtain their $10,000 revenue goal, that they have to fill around 500 orders. If we compare this to leveraging catering, in order to attain that same $10,000 goal, they can average about a ticket average of $200 worth of catering orders, meaning that they would only have to fulfill about 50 orders as opposed to those 500 orders.
So you're basically saying that people are able to make basically the same revenue or potentially more, but they're saving on operational and food costs.
Exactly.
Ah, that's killer. And on that same note, with inflation, I've also noticed how much this has affected social norms in regards to dining. I think we've all noticed a huge reduction eating out, like we just mentioned. However, with catering, there's kind of this unique spot in the market. So instead of groups dining out and like going into restaurants, I've also heard from a lot of restaurant owners that they're starting to see a really big growth in group ordering for takeaway. So, what that is telling us is that there still is an interest in dining out, but because of inflation, how we're traditionally looking at catering is really starting to adjust. So, I think it's really important for restaurant owners to kind of look at this trend and their offering and think, how can I adjust it to how people are wanting to dine? And maybe before you were doing larger catering orders that were 500, 1,000, 2,000, and seeing these tinier group orderings, you might want to write them off. But I really think that most owners shouldn't because they'll be surprised how quickly these smaller orders are starting to add up. And if they're looking at these smaller group orderings as catering, they're also able to start streamlining their processes, which is going to save on time and cost and also give a nice guest experience as well.
All right, let's talk about the workplace, the true bread and butter of catering, right? And as I'm sure we all know, workplace norms are still evolving post the pandemic. I am currently discussing this in an office, which wasn't happening a year or 2 years ago. So we're seeing more and more businesses requesting employees to come back into the office or moving towards these hybrid models and having employees come in around 1 to 3 times per week. And Rachel, can you guess how employers are really motivating employees to come back into the office?
I'm going to assume food since we're talking about food.
Yes, ding, ding, ding. Exactly. So, any neighboring businesses that your restaurants are surrounded by are using free meals as a way to not only encourage employees to come back into office, but also to start to refoster that culture and workplace engagement and have employees have a moment to engage with one another through sharing food. And it's important to hop onto this bandwagon because this can promote catering within these companies.
I love that. Even thinking about how your business can help another business grow is such a powerful way to look
Mhm.
at growth. And one thing I'd like to add too, because I get this a lot in conversations I have, is being flexible to these businesses as well. I think from post-pandemic, we've seen a growth in individual packaging. So being able to offer that for different offices that are really conscious about the health and safety regarding people getting sick. But you'll also have businesses that are really focused on sustainability and might not want that much packaging. So how can you be flexible to both? And another big one that I see as well is being flexible to dietary needs. Like we see in offices, we're going to be people that are asking for vegan meals, vegetarian, they might be gluten intolerant. So how can you, without making your menu so big and complicated, but how can you take a bunch of your different items and make it so that the person ordering for these workplaces have the flexibility to serve all the different dietary needs within their office? And then, so going to our next topic here is experiential catering. So this might be new to a lot of you because it was quite new to me, but I think it's a really cool, fun trend that most restaurants could definitely incorporate somehow. And basically, what experiential catering plays off of is this idea that consumers today are becoming more and more aware and educated and conscious about what they're eating and where their food is coming from. And they want transparency within their food services and the businesses that they're buying from. So, taking this consumer ideal in mind, this year is really focused on the growth of this experiential catering. And it's where customers kind of want to immerse themselves a little bit more into their food rather than just getting a full meal ready for them.
Yeah, a great example of this is taking a look at what Smashburger and Whataburger have done with their build your own burger boxes. And the reason why these are so cool is going back to those social and workplace norms. Customers want their food to be provided for them, right? That's an incentive to go to an event or an incentive to go into work. But from that food that's provided for them, they want to be able to build their own meal from said food in order to put it all together. So you can see this is accomplished through this burger box where we have these burgers and these foods provided, but the consumers who are using this catering can go ahead and build their own burger, their own meal to their own taste buds instead of having to have something that was already selected for them.
I think this really goes back nicely to the trend of like workplaces trying to build back culture and trying to build back that socialization that we've all lost over the years. And like, what a better way than be able to like build your meals together, force everyone off of their desks, and like actually be able to interact some more. So let's jump into technology. We know this is our big focus here at Lunchbox, but we really want to touch on how technology can really change your catering business. And to ground this section, I first just want to touch on how a lot of catering is traditionally managed. So most restaurants typically receive orders via phone, email, or a form on their website, which this process can be really cumbersome, one for the restaurant staff, but also for the consumer, especially if anything ever needs to change. You really got to like go through a lot of motions and a lot of touch points to make sure those changes are placed and correct. And so, Sydney, I know you have so much experience in this area, and I'd love to hear from you of what are some reasons and ways that restaurants can leverage technology to improve their operations today?
Yeah. Great big question. So let's tackle the first one. And first and foremost is to improve guest experience, right? Guest experience is a very large part of restaurant technology and the restaurant business just in general. And consumers today really are used to, and not only used to, expect convenience and flexibility, which on operational side can be difficult for these larger orders. And what used to be a catering order that was pre-planned really far in advance for an event, now a guest is used to having ordering at their fingertips at this convenient short time scale that typically it's done a lot closer to an order date than what used to be. And I'm sure some operations or restaurant people on the line are probably grimacing and nodding along as I say this. And by offering an online ordering solution that can provide you the ease to your customers to navigate your menus, this can alleviate also the admin time that you spend to maintain to fulfill the order and what they're expecting. So second, it also helps to the team that is working hard to sell and fulfill the orders, right? So the consumer is important, as we said, but that's just half the battle. Technology needs to work for you and your team. That's its purpose. It's supposed to remove strain and cost. And if it's not, it's wasting both time and money.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. I think that's something that we really forget about as well, is that like the tools are there to improve your operations, and that's really what that's all they're there for. And so I'm curious as well because, as you said, like this is such a big topic. There's so many features available out there today. What are some key ones that you've seen over the last year that restaurants really should be focused on, or even like starting to look out for?
Mhm. Number one is menus, menus, menus. And I think this can be overlooked from a catering standpoint because an ordering service is going to have a digital menu, and you really want to analyze how this menu is going to work for you. And it's easy for guests to be able to understand and navigate your regular menus, right? But when we don't pay attention to how a catering menu is set up digitally, guests can also become exasperated. It can be cumbersome. They're already under immense pressure to order for a large group of people. And if navigation is difficult, then they're going to end up exhausted and maybe even place an online ordering order for 30 plates not underneath catering, right? And the ticket comes back as like a single order of 30 different salads as opposed to the one tray that you had because the guests become confused. So when the menu works for you, then it also ends up working for the guests. And you can offer cool things like having one menu that has a list of options for how many guests are coming, and a consumer can select, oh, 25 guests, and we know exactly what's included in that tray.
Yeah, and I think also there's something that to add here too is being able to have the control and flexibility of prep times, order times, and like throttling for really peak hours. I've heard like when that mistake has happened where by accident someone places like an individual 30-person order when catering did exist, and now it's like a peak time, and now it's just like so haphazard for both the individual wanting their order on time and also the restaurant trying to get it done, because like there really is nothing worse than being that party planner or that office manager that's like the brunt of like a hangry group of people, or having a cold order come through, and just not ideal. So being able to have that flexibility is so important to look at when you're trying to decide on what kind of technology works for you.
Definitely. And then finally, something I also want to recommend, speaking of flexibility, is the focus on payments. So, complicated payment processing can be a huge killer in the catering business, especially since these ticket orders are so much larger than a single online order. And a consumer placing the order has already gone through the entire ordeal to understand and choose the food for a large group of people. And we don't want to lose this deal once they've already added everything to their cart, right? We're so close. We want payments to be easy and to be able to close out this deal. And a quick way to encourage repeat business is by making this part as simple as possible. So, something that we leverage here at Lunchbox is flexible quoting, also known as save as a quote. And the way that this works is that if a customer calls in and places an order online to an employee over your phone, you leverage Lunchbox's call center and place the order for the guest. Then, what an employee does is they save it as a quote. This quote gets sent in an email format to the guest, and they can click on the link. And this link brings them directly to their order. They can go in and they can make adjustments. They can add or take away whatever they want to do. And once they're done, they can go ahead and provide their payment details through this link opposed to over the phone. And then this way they can also edit the order that they had originally put in with your employee over the phone and feel comfortable paying once they're ready.
Which is such a great like add to it. The amount of times I've been in like offices or even just like planning an event where like I might be placing the order, but I'm not the one that's supposed to be like dealing with payments or going to be the last say on anything, or maybe I'm not going to be the one at the event or the meeting that day. To just have someone else and the flexibility to be able to finish that is a very nice touch that I think we forget about. And then I want to move into data and technology. This is one of my favorite words coming from a marketing background. Data is like the core of most of what I do. And technology is so useful in this sense because it can provide the useful insights that will improve the bottom line. And when catering is done in more traditional manners, it's extremely difficult to attain really robust reporting or be able to nurture customers because that nurturing a lot of times comes from the data understanding of what they've done previously. And this data matters to restaurants because we typically see that they know their profits, they know what they've gained, they know what they lost. That's pretty table stakes for most businesses. But what I'm really talking about is some of that deeper analytics that allow them to find the gaps within their services or what has been really working well and what they can like double up on. And these are things like top orders, co-orders, what's happening at different locations, top modalities. Is everyone ordering from your app? Is everyone ordering from your website? And really being able to understand what's happening within the order analytics. But I also want to say to be a little wary on how the data is being fed back to you from different platforms, because a lot of times you can get analytics, but in most cases, I've seen it time and time again that how teams are getting the data back are not useful. And if you have this like massive spreadsheet of numbers that you'll have to hire a data analyst or someone else to tell you what the story is, and most of the time, you're just going to leave this insight on the table and not do anything with it because we know restaurant owners are extremely busy. And a lot of times, this is something that just doesn't take precedent. And now, here for our last section on sustainability, which is a really important topic. And we're super excited about it because when we were preparing for our webinar today, we both just started nerding out about our favorite brands and organizations that are really taking a stern awareness on it and seeing wonderful growth because of it. And that's why I wanted to add it as a topic today in our discussion, because it's a conversation that a lot of restaurant owners need to start having. We're quickly seeing how much this can affect growth and affect engagement within new and old customers, because adopting more client conscious practices are starting to give a really positive growth to businesses.
Yeah, and going back to what we were kind of nerding out about here is that climate aware restaurants have been outlining the carbon footprint created by each customer, from an environmental impact of sourcing ingredients to utilities, keeping the lights on, etc. And extensive menu descriptions can reveal sustainability of not just ingredients provided, but also cooking techniques and what's required to create a dish. And this also helps to formulate a personal relationship through online ordering with consumers. And restaurants that begin to incorporate these environmental practices will begin to outperform their counterparts and will also attract a broader customer base and also bolster up their reputation.
And as though that all sounds great, I know when I've brought this conversation up to different owners and operators, they can get a little bit intimidated because adding in a whole new practice or flipping a business all to sustainability is very intimidating and could be very cost prohibitive. So we would just want to remind everyone in the session today that nothing needs to flip over all at once. And if it was, generally those changes don't stay. So starting small is really effective, and thinking like, what are things that you can do today, or even just within the next, let's say, month or 6 months, that will really start changing your practices to be more sustainable. And then you can kind of keep growing it as you move along. And so, Sydney, I know we were talking a couple of days about all these great ideas. I'd love for you to share them again to the group of some of the things that you brought up.
Yes, I would love to. So, first off, as you said, starting really simple, starting really small, but this does make a big difference, right? And that would be to have silverware be an opt-in option. So when a guest places their order, they can select whether or not they need silverware included. And if a guest feels like they don't need it, then there's no use in putting it in their order. And then we're saving on waste. And think of how much this can add up with consumers choosing whether or not they want this silverware. Next is leveraging your prep sheets. So here at Lunchbox, we are able to provide our restaurant partners with prep sheets that are mapped out to their specific menu items. And this allows restaurants to exactly map to what should be in each specific menu item within the order. So let's get this onto an example level. Let's say someone orders a catering tray of a house salad. This means that on the prep sheet, it will be exactly mapped up about what is included and how much. So maybe 20 ounces of lettuce, 5 carrots, 2 cucumbers, et cetera, et cetera. And not only does this make the prep super easy for your kitchen, for an operational perspective, but also it's cost effective and sustainable because you're not guessing, you're not trying to estimate how much should be thrown into something, and you don't have to waste part of a particular food item or product that doesn't need to be involved in the menu item. And last but not least, just look to see where and how often you can shop locally. And maybe start with just 2 to 5% of your items. And over time, you can continue to grow. And not only does this help sustainability, but this also helps to plant some roots locally and foster that food restaurateur connection in a local environment.
I love these, especially prep sheets. Like when you first told me that, and I was like, that's genius. I think most sustainability, if you can find ways to like make operations and costs also move forward, they're like the really lasting changes. So it's like such a good tip. And then I just wanted to share a good example of a big organizations that is making a difference through like their ethos. And so if you're to look them up, there's so many different ones out there, but Popeyes kind of made me stop my tracks because it was the first time I've heard of them really making a sustainable change to their plans for the coming years. So specifically, this is 10 years. Like they've really planned this out. And what they're moving towards is removing artificial colors, flavors, preservatives, antibiotics. And then in addition, they're also looking to challenge how their current packaging and protocols will be upgraded. So very something like their cups, for instance, currently are foam, and they see that these are not recyclable, they're not environmentally friendly, so they're going to be switching to paper cups. So this would be, for some people to do this over time could be a big thing all at once, but over 10 years making this change will make a big impact for how their business is affecting the environment. And I thought what was also really cool is that they really looked at their business through a lens of like 3 pillars. So it wasn't just about, where can I change one thing for sustainability, but they're changing their culture into being more sustainable. So they want to look at how food, planet, and people come together and how their brand affects into that. And I found a quote here from one of the company's owners saying that sustainability is about doing the right thing for their guests, because obviously that's top of mind for them and their business growth, but it's also for their environment because it makes such a big impact. And for the people and communities that impact through their business. So for long-term health of not only their business, but their planet and the guests that they depend on, making these changes are very important. So I hope you can kind of take a little glimmer from Popeyes, look up things that they're doing, look at what other people are doing and take their examples and see how you can bring them in-house as well. So to sum everything up today, just wanted to have a quick reminder of everything we went over. One being that to stay on top of trends, we know inflation is really impacting a lot of restaurants today, but taking a look at trends can really help you quickly adjust and still see growth. Try out experimental catering. See how you can bring in this neat idea of having your guests be more involved in the end result. And from a marketing standpoint, maybe even throw in some like competitions or fun ways that you can ask your guests to like, share their favorite burger concoction or their favorite like taco. And that can even like really grow engagement as well. Look at tech stack. Look at how can you, if you're not using technology at all today, what are some ways that you can bring it in-house to start? And if you have been using it, what are the ways that we've talked about today that you can analyze? Is it working for you? Are you streamlining your operations? Are you saving on costs? And if you're not, maybe looking at what other tools you can bring in to help and make those improvements. And then lastly, sustainability. Climate aware restaurants are beginning to really outperform their counterparts. So look at what you can start today and plan out where you can start bringing this in so you don't get lost within the crowd. So thank you, Sydney, for joining me today. Your wealth of knowledge has been incredible. I know everyone today probably was just as thankful as I am. Is there anything else you wanted to add here at the end?
Yeah, these conversations are super important. Thank you for having me. And us here at Lunchbox, and especially us here on the product team, are always here to help facilitate and continue these conversations. So we're here for any questions, conversations, etc., that anyone might have.
Thank you. Thanks again, Sydney. And again, for all our audience members for spending time with us today. We're really thankful for you taking the time out of your busy schedules. We hope you enjoyed this session and we hope you to see you at our next one. If we weren't able to get to your questions today, please reach out to us. We'd love to talk to you. You can reach us at hello@lunchbox.io and one of our team members will be in touch. Thanks again. Bye, everyone.
Bye.